Hello, everyone. How are we all going? Um, I've decided to leave the face camera off this time. There's too much glare in the house, and it was actually quite annoying. I tried a couple of different ways to try and record this without it. Plus, I was constantly getting phone calls, so I'm hoping I can avoid that interruption this way. So anyway, much like the Rip and Time League, I've run the projections across into the Fallen Kingdom League, just to see sort of how things kind of look, and I decided I'll record it and give you a look at it. So, first team. First things first, just in case you haven't watched the other Rip and Time projections, or you weren't in those leagues. There are a couple of people that weren't in those leagues. The way this was all sorted out, or worked out, basically I got probably about 6 different lots of projections from different people in the industry for offensive players, and there was only probably about 2 to 3. It depended on in spots, actually. Sometimes there was 3, sometimes there was only 2, sometimes there was only 1. And I basically averaged out all those projections once they were added all together, and basically come up with a set of projections for each player, and that's how I work the points out per game. So basically, this points per game that's on this spreadsheet here is what that all panned out to. So here goes. First team is my own, Chimera. As we know, there was a theme to this league. We had the ancient Rome, Greek mythology. Had to be just something relating to that, either a god, creature, whatever. So, and thankfully, everyone participated. So, thank you to all of you. So, here we go. Chimera team. Joe Burrow, Caleb Williams at quarterback. Not a lot sitting behind it. Aidan O'Connell might start. Russell Wilson might start. Another thing I meant to mention: this league is a complete dynasty league. None of these players, there's no contracts, no nothing. You basically draft a team to keep it for its eternity. So, James Cook at running back, Mike Evans, Lad McConkey, George Pickens, and Jalen Waddle all projected starters. Kyle Pitts as the starter at tight end. Some depth at tight end with Pat Frymuth and Chika Okonkwo. And what do we got there? Brian Thomas Jr., Ryan Madunze as potential depth, especially going forward anyway. James Conner can plug in at running back. Khalil Herbert looks like he might have a possibly a decent sized role for the Bears. But yeah, offensively, there's not a huge amount of depth maybe for this season, but hopefully going forward there is. Defensively, DT, DeForest Buckner, he's as good as anyone in the game. Fair few depth guys there. Will Anderson, Matt Judon, and Michael Parsons as the starters at defensive end, with, once again, a decent amount of depth at defensive end. And EJ Speed's the only one that projects as a starter at linebacker, but Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah can be depth. Matt Milano looks like he's going to miss a significant amount of the season now, a possible torn bicep, so that kind of sucks. Caden Ellis can definitely start. Demario Davis can definitely start. Jerome Baker can definitely start. So there is depth there at linebacker. Cornerback, Russell Douglas and Kyler Gordon. Corners are corners. Who cares? Unless you've got Devin Witherspoon, none of the rest of them really are that big of a deal. And at safety, I got Julian Blackman, Grant Delpit, I think it's Ifiatu Melifonwu and Antoine Winfield as starters. A pretty solid starting group with Talanoa Funga, Antonio Johnson, Javon Bullard. Probably the primary backups with Jordan Howden, maybe a chance to be a backup. So overall, that projects as 167.84 on offense, 238 on defense. So that's just the aggregate scores for the starters, and overall points of 405.84. What I should have mentioned before I started was I'm going to try and run this all in one podcast through both conferences. So Remus. Now, Remus, I believe, was one of the new people into the league. Brian Lee, I think his last name was. Thanks for joining, Brian. Grades out really well, actually. Jared Goff, Dak Prescott as your primary starting quarterbacks. JJ's done for the year, so he's not going to help you this season. Sam Darnold will now because of the Darnold injury. Looks like he'll probably see significant snaps for the year, unless everything goes wrong there. Sorry, I need a drink. Joe Flacco could be a sneaky help if something was to happen to Anthony Richardson. Running back wise, Rashad White's the only one that grades out as a starter. Personally, I think Kenneth Walker's a far better player, but sometimes in fantasy football, all that matters is touches, and Rashad White gets a shit ton of touches, even if he does very little with them. So, AJ Brown, Cooper Kupp, CeeDee Lamb as your starters at wide receiver. Evan Ingram and Dalton Kincaid round out the starting group on offense. Not a lot of depth. Well, Hunter Henry actually could step in. Foster Moreau, I don't know. Hunter Henry would be your main starter behind him. Maybe Kylan Granson could chip in if at a pinch. Wide receiver wise, Jacoby Myers, Terry McLaurin definitely can step in as a spot starter for sure. Could definitely start over the other guys if need be anyway. So, and obviously Kenneth Walker, Brian Robinson could step in too. So there's plenty of depth there on offense. Defensively, Kalijah Cansey's your number one defensive tackle. Jonathan Grenard and Khalil Mack as your starting DEs. Not a lot behind those two, though. It's pretty thin, actually. Marshawn Nealon might have a future, but I don't know if that future's right now. Nick Bonito's never been... He flashes, but he's not a consistent commodity. Linebacker, Alex Anzalone, Alex Singleton are your starters, according to this. Dane Henley might get a go this year, but actually I missed Jared Verson, on your defensive end. So there's a little bit more depth there for you. But Dane Henley and Jermaine Pratt probably provide your depth at linebacker. CBs, once again, CBs, Paulson Adebo and Deron Bland and Travarius Ward all grade out as starters for you. And at safety, Kevin Byard, Cameron Bynum, and Derwin James grade out as your starters. I haven't seen how long DeMarco Hellams is out for, but if it's, I'm guessing it's a significant amount of time with the Justin Simmons signing for the Falcons today, so I can't imagine that's going to be any better. I can't see him seeing the field anytime soon. Cooper DeJean's a guy I really, really like. I don't know how much we're going to see him as a rookie. Quentin Lake actually scores pretty well per snap. Not sure how big a role he's going to have. So, good starters. Not sure how much depth. Actually, Tony Adams could definitely provide some depth there too. But yeah, overall, your offense grades out with 188.97, defensively 230.26, and overall score of 421.23. Hestia. This was one of the other new people into the league. Marissa. All right. Quarterback is a little bit scary. More than probably a little bit scary. You got Kirk Cousins coming off the torn Achilles, and Baker Mayfield, who has never been the most consistent of producers in the world. So, be interesting to see how Baker goes with Dave Canales gone from Tampa Bay, actually. So, Michael Penix is a good pickup for the future. That future probably is 2 years away from being a reality with the amount of money they gave Cousins for the next 2 years. So, can't see that. And barring injury, of course, if Cousins gets hurt, then Michael Penix will step in admirably. Running back wise, Najee Harris and Christian McCaffrey both grade out as starters for you, as well as Kyron Williams. Wide receiver, you've got Brandon Ayuk and Amon-Ra St. Brown and George Kittle at tight end. A little bit of depth there with Dalton Schultz at tight end as well. Xavier Worthy could produce in the future, maybe this year. I don't mind Khalil Shakir this year for like bye-week replacement starter, injury replacement. I think he'll get quite a few targets this year. Jordan Addison, did see he was hurt. I didn't actually see what the actual injury was, so I don't know how much time he looks like missing, if any. DeAndre Swift, Chuba Hubbard should be a solid player for the first month or so of the season until Jonathan Brooks comes in, maybe a little bit longer. Jerome Ford will play alright as a spot starter if need be too. Ty Chandler could have some value there as well. So look, a bit of depth on offense. Defensively, Cameron Hayward, he's getting long in the tooth, but he's still a damn good defensive tackle. Probably your main backup there would be probably Leonard Williams. He's also probably getting on in years too, but still a very good player. We've got Danielle Hunter, Malcolm Kuntz as your defensive ends. Not a huge amount sitting behind them. Clowney and Floyd and Armstrong could probably all provide depth though. Linebackers, Tremaine Edmonds, Jordan Hicks, Fred Warner, with depth. Not a great deal, actually. Andrew Van Ginkel could be depth at defensive end as well. Yeah, but there's not a lot of depth at linebacker, but you do only have to start one. So if you've got other positions you can plug and play, then you'll be fine there. Corners, yeah, once again, I'm not going to touch too deeply on corners unless you got Devin Witherspoon. That's probably the only one worth having. Safeties, Rayshon Jenkins, Jabril Peppers and Jordan Whitehead. Your starters, they're solid. Your only real backup is probably Geno Stone. Yeah, that's probably your only real backup. So not a lot of depth at safety. Yeah, offensively, we've got 177-28 overall. And defensive points, 209-76. With an overall score of 387.04. Kronos. Who was Kronos? Joey. Mr. Drain. Alright. Joey, we've got... you've probably only really got the two quarterbacks that are really worth anything. Oh, sorry, three. I didn't see Daniel Jones. He's not hard to miss. But CJ Stroud and Tua Tagovailoa, both very solid, very good starting quarterbacks in any fantasy format. So, Jahmyr Gibbs, who is injured already, Breece Hall, Keenan Allen, Zay Flowers, Marvin Harrison Jr., with Jake Ferguson as the tight end. Not a huge amount of depth at tight end. Probably Johnny Smith, who I think could actually have a pretty solid season this year. He's not projected for much. I think it's only a projection of around 10 points or something. But I think he'll do better than that in that offense. Receiver-wise, you got Christian Watson, Jalen Polk, Jonathan Mingo, Tyler Lockett, Deontay Johnson, Kellen Coleman. Probably provide your depth there, so you're pretty deep at receiver. Running back, Austin Eckler might be alright for a spot start here and there. Marshall and Lloyd, I'm not sure. He's injured already. And the other, Kamani Vidal, I don't know. He doesn't seem to have done much so far for the Chargers, so we'll see how that goes once the season actually starts. Defensively, we've got Justin Matabike at defensive tackle. Definitely your standout defensive tackle. Chance that Braden Fisk possibly turns into a good DT. Not generally as a rookie, though. It's generally further down the track, but that's what this league's designed for as well. Defensive ends, Brian Burns, Carl Granderson as your grade out as your starters. Dante Fowler could give a start here and there. Arnold Ebiketie, same deal. And Josh Sweat. And if Tuli Tuapolotu gets actual reps, if Bosa or Khalil Mack was to get hurt, then his production goes up. Lucas Van Ness is another guy that probably gets decent production if he can get the snaps. And Byron Young's probably there with Granderson and Burns in that sort of points area. So yeah, he would be solid. Linebacker, we got Foyle Ilcon and the ageless wonder Levante David. Not outside of Ivan. How did I miss? I've missed Roquan Smith. Give me a second. All right, that's all fixed. Roquan's into the lineup now. Sorry about that. Gonzalez, Taylor Britt at CBs, and Minka, Kirby Joseph, and Jalen Thompson as your starting safeties. Not a huge amount of depth at safety. Probably Tyler Newman, probably Von Bell this year. Linebacker-wise, Ivan Pace probably plugs in as a backup. So, yeah. Overall points on offense, 169.04. Defensively, 237.17 for a 406.21 overall score. Minotaur. Who was Minotaur? So much easier when we had the names in the other league. Steve Stearns. All right. So Steve opens up with Justin Herbert and Anthony Richardson at quarterback, and his primary backup is Will Levis. Running backs, Derrick Henry, Jonathan Taylor. Wide receivers, Chris Godwin, Malik Neighbors, Devontae Smith, and David Njoku as your starting tight end. Tight end wise, Isaiah Likely's a good backup if he gets on the field. Brock Bowers should have potential moving forward, possibly not so much this season. Receiver-wise, there's upside for Michael Wilson, probably very distant upside. T. Higgins is a good plug-in. Tank Dell should be too. Jalen Warren could help at running back. Ty-J Spears might be able to too. Chase Brown, maybe. Trey Benson, maybe. Devin A-Chain can definitely help at running back as well. So, yeah, you got plenty of depth on offense. Defensively, Jeffrey Simmons at defensive tackle. Main backup is probably Dexter Lawrence. Defensive end, Myles Garrett and Latu. Latu grades out as your next starter. With Probably main backup behind him is probably Rashawn Gary. Maybe Miles Murphy might produce something this year. I don't know. I know I see this guy's name, Chase Young, on every single list that I see him on. I've written, if he does anything, be thankful. He's just been very ordinary as a NFL prospect, to be honest, considering where he was taken. Linebacker, you've got Zaire Franklin, Frankie Louvu, and Quincy Williams as your starters. Not a huge amount to back them up. Martin Emerson, Elijah Molden, great as your cornerbacks, and safeties, Jeremy Chin, Richie Grant, and Donovan Wilson. I'd be interested to see where that Richie Grant projection would be sitting right now. I just don't know. I don't know what snaps he's going to get. He'd already sort of half lost his starting job to Marco Helms. Now they've signed Simmons. I don't know where Richie Grant fits into the puzzle. I don't know what their plans are there, but they've basically signed a free safety to take over from a strong safety. So see what their plans are as the season rolls in, I guess. Offensive points 168.39, defensive points 214.05 for an overall score of 382.44. Sorry if I feel like I'm rushing this. If it feels like I'm rushing this a little bit, but I've got to get through 20 teams, and I'm trying not to make it go for 2 hours. So, all right, Jakey with Aries Rampage, actually. Josh Allen at quarterback with Jaden Daniels. Backup probably Drake May he's hoping for eventually. Probably not much of this season. Bryce Young and Jacoby Brissett, I guess, if Drake May's not starting. So, with a whole bunch of dart throws at quarterback. Alvin Kamara starts as a running back for you. Probably Ramondre Stevens as your other potential starter there. Jamar Chase, Nico Collins, Amari Cooper, and Drake London at wide receiver, with Cole Kmet as your starting tight end. There's depth behind at receiver, but like Brandon Cooks should produce. DeAndre Hopkins should produce. I don't know what to think of Jerry Jeudy at this point. Jackson Smith and Jigba and Adam Thielen should be solid too. Jameson Williams is probably, this is it. Whether he's ever going to be anything in the NFL or not, this is his chance. Tight end wise, you've got Zach Ertz, Greg Dulcich, who could be solid backup, Ben Sinnott or Zach Ertz there. So solid depth. Defensive tackle, you got Christian Wilkins as your primary starter. Kobe Turner should be a solid backup for you there. Defensive end, Aiden Hutchinson, Jermaine Johnson, and George Karloftis, grade as your starters. Greg Rousseau, Kayvon Thibodeau, Chop Robinson, probably your primary depth at defensive end. Linebacker, the only guy that graded out as a starter for you was Devin White. Got solid backups here. Bob Spillane, Trenton Simpson should have a solid season, I think. Jack Campbell also. Christian Harris could have a solid season. So they're all there to start if something was to happen. J.C. Horn and Jalen Ramsey at corner. And safety, we've got Jaquan Brisker, Kyle Hamilton, Javon Holland, and Jalen Petrie. All very good, with depth from Justin Reed, Cam Curl, and Deshaun Elliott. Probably your main depth there. Offensively, you grade out with 168.72. Defensively, 227.4 for a 396.12 overall grade. Hermes, I've got to admit, I can't remember who anyone is in this league, so give me a second. Hermes, it was Todd Aaron. Okay, Todd. Got Pat Mahomes and Kyler Murray at quarterback. It's really good. Bo Nix, Deshaun Watson as backups. All right, and running back, Isaiah Pacheco, Bijan Robinson as your primary starters. Backups, possibly Ray Davis might produce. Braylon Allen, if something was to happen to Breece Hall, could be a good handcuff. Dylan Lobe has a chance to do something with the Raiders. Javonte Williams has actually looked solid for the Broncos this offseason. I like Jalen Wright, but he's in a pretty crowded backfield there, so when he's ever actually going to get touches, I don't know. Michael Pittman, he grades out as your only starting wide receiver. I don't think you won't see that very often. Mark Andrews, Travis Kelce, Trey McBride, fantastic at tight end. Don't have to worry about any depth or anything there. Depth at receiver, Rashee Rice looks like he's probably going to dodge suspension this year, which is ridiculous. Demario Douglas could have some. He could produce for the Patriots. Someone's got to catch balls there. Jermaine Burton, I like. He's whether or not this year or not the time that it happens, and Kendrick Bourne falls into a similar spot as Demario Douglas. Someone's going to catch balls for the Patriots. So defensively, you got Chris Jones at DT, easily standout DT. BJ Hill can be a good solid backup. Joey Bosa and Sam Hubbard. While Bosa's upright, he's a very good defensive end. Hasn't stayed upright for a long time though. Hassan Reddick with his holdout, who knows? I don't know. It looks pretty ugly. Jason Owe or Odafe Owe, whatever you want to call him. He can be a solid backup. Bradley Chubb, once he's back, can definitely step in as a starter, but that's probably not until the second half of the season. Linebackers, you got Nick Bolton, CJ Mosley, grayed out as your starters. Jordan Brooks, Blake Cashman, Josie Jewell. Drew Tranquil could probably all step in as starters and produce. Maybe not at the same level, but solid at least. Nate Hobbs, Teron Johnson at CB. Safeties, Buda Baker, Chauncey Gardner-Johnson, Tyrann Mathieu, Harrison Smith. The top end's really good. CJ Gardner-Johnson scores really well when he's actually on the field, but he does get injured a lot. So you kind of need to have some depth sitting behind him. Marcus Williams can produce. Malik Cooker might be able to produce. Brian Cook might be able to do too, but yeah, it's definitely very top heavy at safety. Overall, offensive points were 188.77. Defensive, 225.43 for an overall score of 414.2. The Phalanx, which was Mike Gold's team. This one I can remember. All right. Quarterbacks, Jalen Hurts, Brock Purdy, Geno Smith and Derek Carr as the backups. Travis Etienne at running back. Jonathan Brooks will produce probably back end of the season. He might be useful as the starter. Zamir White, just a bye week fill-in, pretty much. Christian Kirk, DK Metcalf, DJ Moore, and Puka Nacua. I did see Puka's injured already. I don't think he's looking like going to miss time, but he might be a bit dodgy for the first sort of month of the season. Backup wise, you've got Dontavian Wicks, could be a producer. That's one hell of a crowded receiver room there. Calvin Ridley. They love Greg Dortch at the moment. And Sam Laporta at tight end. Noah Fant, Tyler Conklin. Probably your best backups there at tight end. Defensively, Quentin Williams at DT with main backup, probably Deron Payne. Yep. Defensive end, Nick Bosa, Montez Sweat, Shannon Nwosu can be a good backup. I really like Nick Herbig. I like his potential for the future, but for right now, he's not going to see a lot of game time. He's stuck behind a couple of good ones there in Pittsburgh. So Trayvon Walker also provides some depth. What do we got? Linebacker, Azeez Al-Shaair and Ernest Jones as your starters. Yep. Backups, Junior Colson could do pretty solid if he gets on the field. Tyrese Knight has a future, maybe not this season. Devin Lloyd should be a solid backup this year. Kenneth Murray should be too. What we got? Not safeties yet. Cornerbacks, McCreary, and the one worth drafting was Devin Witherspoon. Safeties, Brian Branch, Josh Metellus, Jordan Poyer, and Taylor Rapp as your starters. Chuck Clark is probably your main backup there. Trayvon Moehrig might be able to help out at a pinch. Xavier Woods maybe too. So, offensive points 182.08. Defensive points 238.29 for an overall score of 420.37. All right. What do we got now? Apollo. I think this is Robbie's team actually. Yep, Robbie Shalepi. All right. Quarterbacks. Lamar Jackson, Jordan Love as your starters. Aaron Rodgers backup. Running backs. Saquon Barkley. Nick Chubb actually grades out as one of your starters, which is a bit of a shock. Aaron Jones. Zach Moss is probably your best backup. J.K. Dobbins, if he can stay healthy, should actually produce some points in that scheme, but he's got to stay healthy, and he hasn't done that basically just about ever since he was a rookie, to be honest. Devontae Adams, Tyreek Hill at wide receiver. Josh Palmer, Cortland Sutton, Mike Williams, while he's healthy, probably provide some depth there at receiver. Dallas Goedert's your tight end, and he really is your tight end. There's not much sitting behind him. Mike Gesicki could get some points, but it doesn't grade out very well. Tucker Kraft could do something in Green Bay too, if he's healthy. Defensively, Zach Sieler, whatever his name is, that defensive tackle. Kenny Clark, Jalen Carter, Danico Autry provide depth there. Autry misses the first 6 weeks of the season, so otherwise he'd probably be up there as a potential starter. Max Crosby and TJ Watt, that's pretty easy starters at defensive end that you just plug and play them every week and hope you don't have to replace them at any point. What do we got? Linebackers, we got Bobby Wagner and Quay Walker, but I have a feeling I might have made a little boo-boo here. Give me a second. All right, back again. No, Quay Walker isn't one of the starters. Terrell Bernard drops into there with Bobby Wagner. Quay Walker becomes a backup. Mike McFadden could produce as a backup. Nate Landman. Devondre Campbell should be solid as a backup needed too. Juwan Bentley can be too. Dax Hill, Kenny Moore, CBs, and what do we got here? Jesse Bates, Reed Blankenship, Kyle Duggar, and Jason Pinnock as your starters. Justin Simmons would probably jump in over Jason Pinnock now. But I have a serious doubt that Robbie will want to have two safeties off the same team. So I would expect some form of movement there. Overall, offensively, 179.39. Defensively, 243.61. And for an overall score of 423 on the dot. Icarus, who was Steve Peters. All right. We got Trevor Lawrence and Matt Stafford at quarterback. Not much else. You kind of hope Justin Fields at some point lands a gig. Who knows? I don't know. Gardner Minshew, possibly the same deal. Running backs, you got Josh Jacobs as your only starter. Joe Mixon, probably your best backup there with David Montgomery. Receiver-wise, you got Stephon Diggs, Justin Jefferson, Chris Olave, Garrett Wilson. Debo must grade out just under that. So he's not quite in the starting lineup according to this. I don't know how, actually. But, yeah, it is what it is. Yeah, it's a pretty good set of wide receivers. TJ Hawkinson grades out as your number one starter at tight end. So if we're being honest, the point or two where Debo may come in over Stephon Diggs is probably overridden here because Hawkinson ain't starting the season and it's probably about a 3 to 4 point drop off to Luke Musgrave after that. So yeah, I'm pretty happy to call that pretty even. Derek Brown at DT. Ed Oliver's probably a primary backup there. Josh Hines-Allen and Harold Landry as your starting defensive ends. Bryce Huff could be a good solid backup there. Could he pay? Not a huge amount of depth. There's some good dart throws there. They could be guys that turn into something down the road. TJ Edwards, Bobby Okereke at linebacker with Patrick Queen. Dorian Williams probably gets a bigger role now. Tyrell Dodson should do solid in Seattle. Divine Diablo. Adrian Cooper, if and when he gets on the field. And Cody Barton should be solid as well. CBs, L'Jarius Sneed and Derek Stingley Jr. And safeties, Jair Brown, Amani Hooker, Julian Love, and Xavier McKinney. Depth-wise, Brandon Jones probably your best backup, and hoping for some return on Cam Kitchens. Darnell Savage might score in Jacksonville. I'm not sure what his role is there. So overall, 174.99 on offense. Defensively, 238.38 and 413.37 overall points. Now, this is the overall rankings for the conference. So Apollo, Robbie takes out the number 1 spot. Remus, number 2 spot for Brian. Mike Gold, the Phalanx, at number 3. Hermes, God, I can't remember who that was again now. Todd Aaron, that's right. In the 4 spot, Icarus, which was Steve Peters, yep. In the number 5 spot, Kronos, which was, I think, Joey. Yeah, Joey. Joey goes into the 6th spot, so he's the last of the playoff spots according to this. Myself, I just missed out on the playoffs according to this, and so did Jake. Marissa and Steve Stearns, I think it was. Am I right? God, I can't even find it. Yeah, Steve Stearns apparently in the last spot. So I honestly don't think there's a great deal between most of the conference. I didn't feel like there was a standout looking at the teams. It'll be interesting to see how the season plays out. I was actually planning on doing this in one big podcast, but we're 40 minutes in, and I don't want to put anyone through that excruciation of having to get through this one to get to the next one. So I'm going to call it a day on this one, and I'll start a brand new podcast for the Coliseum Conference. All right, thanks for listening, guys.